Good afternoon. I'm Robert White, Council Member at Large and Chair of the Committee on Housing. Today is Wednesday, May 20th, 2026, and the time is 11:05 a.m. I'm calling to order this additional meeting of the committee to review the report and recommendations of the Committee on Housing on the fiscal year 2027 budget for agencies under its purview. We have a quorum consisting of myself and Council Members Brianna Nadeau from Ward 1 and Matt Fruman from Ward 3. Each year, the council conducts detailed oversight to evaluate how DC's agencies are performing. First, we examine how the agencies under our committee are doing and listen to the feedback from residents about their experiences with government services. Then, the mayor proposes a budget outlining her priorities for the upcoming year. The council reviews this proposal carefully to decide where to make changes. During this phase, residents play an important role by reviewing the mayor's proposal and offering feedback and suggesting improvements. After considering that input, committees finalize their funding decisions and vote on them before sending recommendations to the full council for consideration. Today, we've reached the point where this committee will discuss and vote on its recommendations to the full council. All council members and staff should have received draft materials from the committee yesterday in preparation for today's discussion. This budget enforces what we've seen from the executive administration year after year: give tax breaks to the wealthiest and cut services for the marginalized, and pray for trickle-down economics to work, even though it never does. Last year, we agreed to give away $1 billion to a billionaire to build a stadium they said would create good-paying labor jobs. And this year, the mayor's budget takes away agreed-upon pay increases for those same workers. Residents are watching how we deploy limited resources in a time when they are feeling squeezed, and many of them feel the system is not meeting their needs, whether they're trying to stay housed, find steady jobs, or provide stability for their families. Their frustration is real and it's valid. Our office hears this every day, from families stretching their income to cover rent, from returning citizens facing barriers to stability, and from tenants who have contacted every agency they can think of and still haven't received help. That's why this committee approached the FY27 budget with clear priorities: stabilize what's working, fix what's broken, and direct limited dollars toward what residents say matters most. I'm glad that even in a constrained year, we were able to prioritize the preservation of affordable housing. The committee dedicates 30% of the Housing Production Trust Fund to preservation because preservation stretches limited dollars further and delivers results faster than new construction. We also restored $271,000 to the Small Buildings Program, increasing its funding from $1.17 million to $1.441 million, so small landlords can make essential repairs and keep longtime tenants housed safely. With nearly 90% of our rental units built before 1978, which means 50 years old or older, these tools are critical to prevent displacement. We've seen before that digging out of a deficit can push longtime residents out of the city. It happened to my own family. I don't want that to happen again. Preservation is one of our strongest, most cost-effective tools to keep people in their homes as we weather this fiscal moment. On homeownership, we strengthened HPAP, not only by improving the program itself, but by increasing its funding. The committee added a little more than $636,000 to HPAP, raising its total to over $28 million, which restores part of the mayor's cut. Alongside strengthening HPAP, we took action to support families exiting rapid rehousing. Each year, hundreds of families are exited from the program, but still cannot afford market rent, and most are at real risk of falling back into homelessness. To address that, the committee funded 26 new local rent supplement program vouchers totaling $1.1 million, specifically for families exiting rapid rehousing. Then, beginning in fiscal year 28, we will fund another 12 vouchers with the help of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. I want to thank Councilmember Nadeau and her staff for that additional funding, as well as Councilmember Fruman and the Committee on Human Services for their collaboration on the DHS side to make these vouchers happen. For the families who receive them, these vouchers are life-changing. They prevent homelessness before it happens and help parents keep their kids housed and stable. We also provided dedicated funding for security deposit assistance at DCHA, addressing a major barrier that prevents families from actually losing units. We added $1.7 million in FY27, $1.3 million in FY28, and $297,000 in FY29, creating a multi-year runway for stability. To protect tenants displaced by emergencies like fires and floods, we restored $200,000 to the Office of the Tenant Advocate's Emergency Housing Assistance Program, raising it from $570,000 in the mayor's proposal to $770,000 in the committee's budget. OTA runs out of this funding every year. With rising building closures and evictions, this safety net is more essential than ever. Even outside of the Committee on Housing, we advance investments that support resident stability, rights, and opportunities. We sent $1 million to the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety to support access to justice, ensuring residents can defend their rights in the housing system. We also sent funding to the Committee of the Whole to fund a portion of my youth mentorship bill, giving DC government employees an hour of leave every week to mentor or tutor DC kids. We asked young people what they need, and they told us they need mentorship and guidance. Funding this part of the bill is a huge investment with a big impact. And we sent $125,000 to the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor to support the annual MLK Day Parade in Ward 8, strengthening community and civic engagement. Residents feel like the system isn't working, and too often they're right. The budget doesn't solve everything, but it does move us toward a more stable, transparent, and resident-focused housing system. Even in a difficult fiscal year, we prioritize preserving affordable homes, helping families avoid homelessness, strengthening pathways to home ownership, and protecting tenants from displacement. That's what residents told us matters most, and that is where we put our resources. Before I open the floor to discuss the report, I want to acknowledge the members of my staff for their incredibly hard work. Jaya Pillay, our committee director, has worked tirelessly with our team and with agencies and the budget office and others to make sure we could fund priorities and find as much money as possible. Christian Whisker, I think this is his first budget, has worked endlessly to make sure that our agencies were stable, that we could find funding in places that it wasn't being utilized, and make sure we were putting as much forward in this budget, this committee budget, as possible. Francesca Bryce, our senior legislative assistant, Kate Conquest, legislative assistant, Maurice Cates, and Jakayla Davis have been just, absolutely phenomenal in their work to make this budget as strong as it is. I could not be more proud of this team. And as other members know, these are the folks who did the very hard work here. I just get to take the credit for it. But I do want to publicly thank them. They work with impossible odds. I also want to acknowledge the members of this committee. Council members Bonds, Nadeau, Fruman, and Pinto, and your staff. We only move forward when we move together, and we appreciate your sincere collaboration. With that, is there any discussion on the report and recommendations of the Committee on Housing on the fiscal year 2027 budget for agencies under its purview? Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you. Chairperson White, I want to offer congratulations to you and your team for the fine work on this budget. As always, I believe approving these committee recommendations today leaves these agencies in a much better place than where you found them. I'm glad that I was able to support some of our shared goals through transfers from the Public Works and Operations Committee, including 12 new LRSP housing vouchers starting in FY28, which combined with your contributions supports a total of 38 new vouchers. I believe I've been able to contribute funding to affordable housing vouchers in every single budget I've worked on as council member. And given that this is the last housing committee budget I will be voting on, there was no way that I was going to break that streak now. So thank you for working with me on that. The need for residents is just too great, and I hope that council will continue to carry this torch in years to come. I was happy to send a transfer for personnel services at DHCD that are required to fully implement reforms and improvements to the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, included in Title IV of the Rental Act passed last year. I'll flag for colleagues there is at least $700,000 in non-personnel costs outstanding to fulfill the bill's fiscal impact. Those funds start in FY28 as well. Candidly, I hope that will allow for implementation of TOPA reforms under a new administration that's less actively hostile to such a bedrock of the district's housing ecosystem. Outside of the Housing Committee, I also appreciate your $1 million transfer to help close a significant gap in funding for the Access to Justice program. I know many others are very grateful for that contribution. I want to briefly elevate a few components of the Housing Committee's proposed budget. First, I appreciate the committee's changes to the mayor's proposed subtitle on HPTF reporting, which sends a clear message that affordability targets are meant to apply on a fund level rather than imposing those requirements on each individual project that's funded. We've heard in no uncertain terms that the agency's recent pivot in that direction has been disastrous to the viability of projects without getting us much closer to our goals of affordable housing production. I also see your proposed reforms to streamline inclusionary zoning as an important step toward making that program work as promised, both for owners of IZ units and prospective tenants. There's no reason that IZ should be as onerous as a process as it currently is, and I hope the subtitle is something the council can build upon in the coming months. Also, on the topic of making sure people can actually occupy the units that we've provided subsidy for, your $1.7 million dedicated funding for security deposit assistance helps address a long-running pain point for DCHA voucher recipients. This is something I dealt with as Human Services Committee Chair back in the day, and I'm glad to be seeing it addressed head on. I appreciate your team's cleverness in finding efficiencies in DCHA's debt service budget, which I can see helped fund a lot of immediate operating needs. I do want to flag my great interest in getting the Bruce Monroe New Community site towards groundbreaking in the next year. While I've made this clear to the executive, they have still admitted that it faces a funding gap of $33 million. Since this is a joint development between DEMPED and the Housing Authority, I would value this committee's help and expertise in DCHA's capital budget to make sure DCHA is adequately contributing to the completion of this project that's been in the pipeline for over a decade. Again, I'm greatly appreciative of you, Chairman White, your committee staff, and your budget analyst, Joe Wolf, who was as dependable as ever in getting the information we needed to fund these critical priorities. I look forward to lending my support to this report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Nadeau. Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you very much, Chairman White. Thank you to you and your team for putting together this great report. Thank you for sending dollars to our committee for support for LRSP and folks exiting from rapid rehousing. You came into this portfolio a number of years back with enormous challenges in front of you, and there is a lot to do in this space, but you have accomplished a lot in improving systems. You're doing it again in this report, things like the changes to inclusionary zoning, really helpful, rationalizing the way in which our dollars are invested so they're matching what are the needs of the day. Thank you very much for that work. We need to figure out how to put the dollars that are in this space to the best use possible, because times are harder. And we see it in the voucher space, where it's not a question of how many new people are we going to be able to house. The question is, how do we make sure we can at least keep paying for and housing the folks who are there? And how do we make sure that, to the extent that there is vacancy anywhere out there, that we're getting people and families into those units? That, again, just as an illustration, the work you did on inclusionary zoning helps in that space. Still have a distance to go, but we've traveled a long way. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you, Councilmember Fruman. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you so much, Chairman White, and your entire team and the Budget Office for all of your hard work on this budget report. I know this has been a very tough budget season for everyone, and really appreciate all of your hard work on this housing budget, especially in a year that we saw many proposed reductions affecting our most vulnerable residents in the district. In the proposed 27 budget, we saw decreased funding proposals for ERAP, permanent supportive housing, and rapid rehousing, all of which are very important programs for our residents. I was pleased to see that the committee was able to find additional funding for the home purchase assistance program to bring the funding up to a level more similar that it is this year. And as we continue to respond to the affordability crisis we're facing in the district and around the nation, it is vital that we as a government provide resources to those who are most vulnerable, and HPAP is a key program that has a proven track record of making homeownership attainable for low and moderate income residents. I also appreciate the committee finding $1.7 million to put towards more security deposit assistance, something that is greatly needed for those who can afford rental payments but might not have the savings built up to be able to pay the lump sum needed for these costly security deposits. This barrier should not keep residents from being housed in the city, and adequately funding this is one way to help residents find stable housing. I also want to express my appreciation for all of the work with MORCA and the efforts to strengthen services and accountability for our returning citizens. Supporting our returning citizens is essential for successful reintegration, securing employment, family, community stability, and all of our public safety goals. DC must continue to remove the systemic barriers that make it harder for residents to come home, secure housing and employment, and rebuild their lives. I also want to thank the committee for transferring $1 million to the Judiciary Committee to fund the Access to Justice program. Access to civil legal services keep our residents housed, safe, and treated with dignity. Given the over $27 million cut Access to Justice is facing in the proposed budget, the task of restoring funding requires a whole of council approach, and I really appreciate the Housing Committee prioritizing this funding despite all of the additional fiscal pressures under the agencies. I also want to note that I know there's a lot of due diligence in identifying additional funding during this difficult budget cycle, and that includes a lot of hard choices. I do want to ask you, Chairman White, about some of your expectations around DHCD, particularly for the reduction of grant compliance in DHCD, as well as the over $400,000 cut to the executive administration program, and how you anticipate the agency being able to fulfill its important functions in the face of those cuts.
Give me one moment, Councilmember Priscilla, because there were some misunderstandings that the executive had about the budget that we worked out moments before the hearing started. So I want to make sure those are not things that have been resolved. So from DHED, we only cut 4 positions. It's a little wonky on paper because there's a transfer, 6.7 FTEs to the Housing Production Trust Fund. So it's still within the agency, but we only cut 4 positions, and those were vacant positions.
And that's what's being reflected in the administration?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I guess just in our shared goal to make sure that the process moves forward quickly, is it your understanding that that won't have any delay ramifications for projects going through DHCD?
That's right. We work closely with DHED and with the executive. We've confirmed that there should not be a delay. And again, there was some misunderstanding that was flagged for us last night that really the budget office helped work through just as this markup was starting.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before we close, I want to thank the people who made sure we could get to this point. In addition to my team, that includes our budget dream team, Jen Budoff. I know she hates this because every agency is going to say it. I mean, every committee is going to say it, but Jen's leadership is so valuable. It is steadfast. It is expert. It is precise. When Jen tells us something, we believe it. And that is high praise. And so, Jen, your guidance has been so phenomenal. Thank you. Joe Wolf, I got to tell you, my team is always excited that you're our budget person. And our budget analyst again. You would think it's like a holiday when they're like, yes, we still have Joe Wolf. Or they wanted me to say, Joe, thank you for your hard work, dedication in answering all 1,000 of my office's emails and Teams messages. Thank you for your attention to detail and thoughtful budget work that allowed us to get to this point. We had a vision and you showed us how to execute it. So that is from the team. Ann Phelps, our budget counsel and chief of staff for the budget office, and your honesty, kindness, hardworking nature and genuine love for this work shine through what you do every day. Even your angry face looks kind of happy. So you make this building better by just being you and being unwavering in your positivity in the face of a lot of questions and difficulties. So thank you all very much, sincerely. They're not here with us today, but in the general counsel's office, I really want to thank Nicole Streeter, our general counsel, who we are lucky to have. Her guidance is guidance that we call upon regularly, and they keep us on track. And Valerie Nadal, the committee's assistant general counsel, who we've had the pleasure of working with for many years, and whose thoughtful feedback and great style, by the way, and steady presence make our legislation and our team better. And from the OCFO's office, I want to thank Jamie Latinen, the fiscal analyst assigned to our committee. Jamie is always quick to respond, thoughtful in his approach, and genuine pleasure to work with, even when the to-do list is long. We value his, where's Val? There you are. Thank you. Thank you for all of your work, Val. With that, the time is 11:26 a.m. and this meeting is, wait, we got to vote on it. Getting ahead of myself. All right. Only if we want to. All those in favor of I want to read the name of it correctly. Fiscal year 2027 budget for agencies under its purview, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it unanimously. With that, the time is still 11:20. No, it's 11:27 now. AM, and this meeting is adjourned.